The day I died, the Marquis's mansion was hung with lanterns and draped in festive colors, welcoming back their true pearl, and my husband, with his own hands, wrapped the white silk around my neck. He pressed close to my ear and whispered, Nuan suffered in the countryside for 16 years. You should at least give her something in return." When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the age of 7. The Marquis and his wife smiled gently. "Child, would you be willing to follow us from now on?" This time, I stepped back and said, "No need. I bring misfortune to all my close relatives." I took a step back and looked at my own 7-year-old child's hands on the imperial throne. The young emperor looked at me and my twin sister, Shen Yu, with a gentle expression. My father, General Shen, and his eldest son both died for the nation in the northern frontier a month ago. When my mother heard the tragic news, she immediately coughed up blood and followed them in death. The Shen family has always been loyal and valiant, and now only we remain, 2 orphaned girls, each only 7 years old. In the vast general's residence, aside from loyal servants, we have no close relatives to rely on. Grateful for the loyalty of the righteous, the emperor specially summoned us into the palace. Intending to decide our future in the hall to either side of the throne stood 2 groups of people. On the left were the civil official Marquis of Stability, Shinjiru, and his wife, Lady Lin. The look in their eyes as they regarded us was full of pity and affection. On the right was a martial official, a middle-aged man of imposing stature wearing a scarlet Chilean robe, General Wei Bei Chin Lai. His back was straight as a pine tree, and when he looked over, he showed little expression, only a slight nod. Grand General Shen sacrificed his life for the nation. He is truly one of my most trusted pillars of state, a cornerstone of the realm. Leaving behind you 2 sisters, I feel deep compassion. By law, the descendants of loyal martyrs should be supported and raised by the court. Today I summoned you here to ask about your own wishes. His gaze fell on me first. Shen Yuan, you are the elder sister. The Marquis of Anding's household is one that has long upheld poetry and propriety. The Marquis and Madam are kind-hearted and willing to teach you patiently. Are you willing? In my previous life, I was consumed by the agony and terror of losing my family and home, and I was tormented by one border battle report after another, by news of the sacrifices of my father's and brother's subordinates, until I could barely sleep at night. I became filled with resistance and fear toward military generals and the battlefield. The gentle concern shown by the Marquis and Madam of Anding was like the only driftwood to a drowning person, and I almost grabbed it without hesitation. But my younger sister, Shen Yu, with red eyes, loudly said that she wanted to follow General Qin. She wanted to learn martial arts, go to the battlefield, and carry on the will of our father and brothers. Fate diverged from there. I entered the Marquis's splendid household and became Miss Shen. Shen Nuanuan was no longer the Shen family's only legitimate daughter. After storming out of the Marquis's residence in a fit of anger, she was abducted by human traffickers. 10 years later, she was found and brought back, while I met the end of my usurped good fortune at the hands of a white silk sash. My younger sister threw herself into the bloody battlefield and ultimately returned wrapped in horsehide, with even her whole body never recovered. At this moment, atop the Golden Palace Hall, everyone's gaze fell on my sister and me. The Lin matriarch pressed a handkerchief to the corner of her eye, looking as though she wished nothing more than to immediately pull me into her arms and protect me. It was only later that I learned what they wanted. General Shen had made outstanding military achievements, and the emperor had rewarded him handsomely. Combined with the wealth accumulated by the Shen family over several generations, their fortunes were among the most substantial in the capital. Not to mention my father's prestige and connections in the army, adopting me would not only win them a reputation for honoring the loyal and the virtuous before the emperor, but also allow them to rightfully take over that inheritance, and use my father's connections, for the Marquis of Anding's estate, which longed to rise even higher. It was an excellent move that brought multiple benefits at once. In my previous life, they had indeed used these advantages to bring glory to the Marquisate for quite some time, until the true legitimate daughter, Shen Nuanuan, returned, and I became an eyesore and stumbling block. All those former benefits then became my original sin. The emperor on the throne was also waiting for my answer. I slowly raised my head, and my gaze met that of my younger sister Shen Yu beside me. Her little face was tense, her lips pressed into a thin line, and her eyes held sadness, stubbornness, and a hint of nervousness. I withdrew my gaze and looked back toward the throne, reporting to your majesty, this commoner woman is unwilling. The smile on the Marquis of Anding's face froze. Lady Lin's handkerchief, pressed to the corner of her eye, paused in midair. The emperor raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh, why? I took a deep breath and said word by word. Because this common woman's fate brings harm to all 6 of my close relatives. A low gasp rose from the ranks of the civil officials, and a slight commotion also stirred among the military officials, bringer of misfortune to 6 relatives. In a dynasty that firmly believed in the mandate of heaven, this was an almost utterly vicious accusation, especially coming from the mouth of a 7-year-old girl who had just lost all her closest kin. Shinjiru's expression turned awkward and ugly, and the affectionate look from moments before cracked apart. Mrs. Lin was even so startled that she took half a step back, her eyes full of aversion and avoidance. What they wanted to adopt was the descendant of loyal martyrs, a lucky star with a generous dowry, not a hot potato who had publicly admitted to bringing misfortune upon 6 relatives. The expressions of those in the hall varied, and the looks they turned on me grew even more complicated. Shock, doubt, pity too. Qin Lai frowned tightly. He stepped forward. Your Majesty, I am but a rough man, born and raised in the ranks. I do not believe in such talk of strange powers and gods. On the battlefield, swords and blades have no eyes, and life and death are each subject to fate. What does any of that have to do with one's destiny? The Shun family's loyal martyrs have all been righteous and heroic, their noble spirit enduring forever. How could it be insulted by the words conflict and punishment? He paused and looked at me. Miss Shun has nowhere to go. My Wei Bei general's manor is not afraid of that. Would you be willing to come back with me? I, Qin Lai, will certainly treat you as my own and teach you the principles of loyalty and valor, so that General Shun's name will not be tarnished. His words rang out forcefully, in sharp contrast to the awkwardness of the Marquis of Anding and his wife at that moment. Many of the generals nodded slightly, clearly in agreement with Qin Lai's words. However, I slowly shook my head at Qin Lai. Many thanks for General Qin's kind intentions, but this commoner woman is also unwilling to go to the general's residence. Qin Lai was stunned. After the couple, the Marquis and Marchioness of Anding, were taken aback. A trace of confusion flashed across their eyes. That girl even refused the Wei Bei general's residence. What on earth does she want to do? The emperor leaned forward. Shen Yuan, you're unwilling to go to the Anding Marquis residence, and you're unwilling to go to the Wei Bei general's residence as well. Then what do you intend to do? Do you want to remain in the palace forever, or go to a temple and become a nun? I raised my head, my heart pounding like a drum, cold sweat beading in my palms, but I knew this was my only chance, a chance to fight for a way out, to carve out a path to survival for myself. I loosened my tightly clenched fist and asked a shocking question. Your Majesty, I, a humble woman, dare to ask. My father died in battle for the nation, and my elder brother also followed him in sacrifice for the state. Of the Shun family's direct bloodline, only my younger sister and I remain. According to the great Zhu law, when a meritorious minister dies without heirs, may his daughter inherit the title and the family estate under imperial favor. Inside the hall, this time, it was so quiet that one could truly hear a pin drop. Inherit the title, a 7-year-old girl, in the Golden Throne Hall, in front of the emperor and the civil and military officials of the entire court, asking whether she could inherit her father's title. The pupils of Shinjiru, Marquis of Anding, shrank sharply. If Shen Yuan really inherited General Shen's title as a woman, then the enormous family fortune and the connections in the army would have nothing whatsoever to do with the Marquis's residence. All of their schemes would come to nothing. General Qin Lai of the Wei Bei army suddenly turned to look at me, a startling light bursting in his eyes, filled with shock and admiration. Shen Yu was stunned, forgetting to cry. Staring blankly at me with her mouth slightly open, the emperor fell silent. Shen Yuan, do you know what you are saying? Shinjiru's lips moved slightly, as if he wanted to say something, But under the emperor's gaze he did not dare act rashly, and could only stare fixedly at me. Your Majesty. This commoner woman knows that these words are abrupt and deserving of 10,000 deaths. I am young and ignorant, and should never presumptuously comment on matters of court and state. It's just. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks. I lifted my head, tears still unfallen. As the eldest daughter of the Shen family, if I were to attach myself to another surname and forget my roots, I would not only fail the spirits of my father and brothers in heaven, but also chill the hearts of the soldiers who followed my late father for so many years. Your humble servant dares not covet rank or honor. I kowtowed again, my voice earnest. I only beg that your Majesty, in memory of my late father who sacrificed his life for the nation and the loyalty and martyrdom of our entire family, permit this humble servant to remain, for the time being, as a daughter of the Shen family, to stay in the old residence, manage the family estate, and raise my younger sisters, first. This will fulfill the filial duty of my sisters and me, so that our parents' spirits will not be left in neglect before their memorial tablets. Second, it will steady the hearts of the Shen clan's former retainers, so that the loyal souls of the dead will not be without refuge. Third, my father often said that every bit of property the Shen family possessed was taken from the nation and used for the nation. This humble servant is willing to swear before your Majesty that I will carefully manage all the Shen family's remaining assets, estates, and pension rewards, after covering the expenses for supporting my two sisters and our loyal servants. All remaining income may be used to aid the orphans of fallen soldiers, provide military supplies and grain for the border garrisons, or be paid into the national treasury, so as to repay your Majesty's boundless grace and comfort my late father's unfulfilled wish. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire hall erupted in an uproar. A flicker of shock flashed in the emperor's eyes. Shinjiru's face turned pale and green. If Shen Yuan were truly to set up her own household and take charge of the Shen family's vast fortune, then all his previous calculations would come to nothing. Even pressing further would instead make it seem sinister. Linsha was already on the verge of collapse, held up only by the maid beside her, and the look in her eyes as she stared at me was filled with shock and fear. 3. The emperor nodded and fell silent for a moment. If I grant your request and allow you to temporarily oversee the Shen family and raise your younger sister, then what of your sister, Shen Yu? Would she be willing to remain with you in the Shen residence? Shen Yu trembled violently, her small hand clutching the sleeve of my mourning clothes. I want to stay with Sis. Wherever Sis goes, I'll go. I don't want to be separated from Sis. After saying that, she clung tightly to me. Lord Marquis, General Qin, since the Shen sisters feel this way, do the two of you have anything to say? Qin Lai clasped his fists. Your Majesty, although Miss Shen is still young, her ambition is commendable, her filial devotion is touching, and it is even rarer that she has such a heart for serving the country. This general believes that even in the spirit of General Shen, he would surely be comforted. This general has no objection and is willing to abide by your Majesty's judgment. He paused, looked at me, and said, if Miss Shen has any need in the future, my Wei Bei General's manor will certainly do everything in its power to help. His words were tantamount to supporting my request. On Shinjiru's side, his expression changed repeatedly, and who knew how many thoughts had flashed through his mind. He forced a smile and bowed, saying, General Shen sacrificed his life for the nation and left behind his bloodline. If his family's estate and standing can be preserved, it will indeed reassure loyal ministers and inspire the morale of our soldiers. This minister agrees. The emperor slowly spoke. Granted, the Shen sisters, descendants of loyal and valiant heroes, are worthy of praise for their filial piety and righteousness. I hereby grant Shen Yuan, in the capacity of General Shen's daughter, temporary authority over the Shen family's estate, to raise her younger sister Shen Yu. As for General Shen's title, the emperor pondered for a moment. According to the regulations, it should be inherited by his son. However, the Shen family has no surviving male heirs. Let this matter be discussed later. Shen Yuan, since you have such resolve, you should conduct yourself well, live up to my expectations, and do not disgrace the loyal and heroic name of your father and brothers, commoner. Woman Shen Yuan, Shen Yu, offers humble thanks for your majesty's heavenly grace. Long live your majesty, long live, long live. My sister and I kowtowed together. After finishing my thanks, I respectfully bowed once toward the directions of Marquis Anding and his wife, and of General Qin. This commoner woman also wishes to thank the Marquis and Madam, as well as General Qin, for your noble righteousness. If my words were abrupt in the heat of the moment just now, I sincerely hope you will be forgiving. The Marquis and Madam once shared a close girlhood friendship with my mother, and General Qin was even a dear friend of my late father. My sisters and I are deeply grateful for the loving care and consideration shown by the two elders. I raised my head and looked at them with clear, steady eyes. Although His Majesty has now permitted my sister and me to remain temporarily in the Shen family, my sister and I are still young, and there are no elders at home to help us. We are truly frightened. I respectfully ask your grace and General Qin, in consideration of your ties with my late father and mother, to show my sister and me more care and guidance in the days to come. Marquis Anding nodded reluctantly. This is only right, Qin Lai said directly. Miss Shen, there's no need to be so polite. If you have any difficulties, just say so. I felt somewhat reassured. I've often heard my father mention that General Qin has many talented people under his command, and he especially praised a young cavalry captain surnamed Wei, saying his name was something like Wei Ting. My father said that although he is young, his mastery of military strategy, horsemanship, archery, and martial arts all come from General Qin's true teachings, and what's even rarer is that he is upright and sincere by nature. I turned to Marquis Anding again, my tone even more obedient. When my mother was still alive, she often told me that the Marquis's residence is a family of letters, with a profound heritage. My mother especially admired a gentleman surnamed Su in the Marquis's household. Was his name Su Yang? She said he was learned and of noble character. Not only did he excel in the classics and historical texts, and the masters and collected works, but he also had unique insights into arithmetic, law, and even household management. He was truly a gentleman with the practical talent to govern and apply his knowledge to the world. Marquis Anding's expression softened a little, and he stroked his beard as he said, Mr. Su is indeed a scholar retained by my residence, and quite renowned for his talent. Madame Lin also nodded slightly from the side. I seized the moment and looked at the Emperor with hopeful eyes, then at Qin Lai and Marquis Anding. Your Majesty, my Lord Marquis, General Qin, my sisters, and I remain at the Shen residence. Though we are under your Majesty's protection, we are shallow in learning and limited in understanding. If we are to manage the family business in the future, without a wise teacher to guide us, I fear we will only become the butt of ridicule. This humble maiden earnestly begs your Majesty for your gracious permission, and also implores the Marquis and General Qin to grant their approval. Could I ask that Lieutenant Wei Ting from General Qin's residence, when free, come to teach my sisters some basic skills for strengthening the body and protecting themselves, and could Mr. Su Yang from the Marquis's residence also spare some time to teach my sisters to read and write, and to understand reason and justice? I raised my head, tears glistening in my eyes, yet I still tried my best to look obedient. Wei Ting was a rising young man of humble origins under Qin Lai's command in recent years, brave and decisive, strict in military discipline, and with an excellent reputation. Su Yang, on the other hand, was a counselor highly relied upon by the Marquis of Anding's household, learned and upright, with no interest in fame or fortune. These two were indeed both upright and talented men. Having them teach two orphaned girls would leave no one able to find fault. Qin Lai hesitated almost none at all. This is no big matter. That brat Wei Ting can have such an opportunity, that is his blessing. I will accept on his behalf. He will certainly be made to teach the two young ladies diligently. The Marquis of Anding, Shenjiru, secretly gritted his teeth. Su Yang was a counselor he quite valued, and at times even took part in some confidential affairs. Yet now this girl had singled him out to teach two girls to read. But if word got out, it would make his marquisate seem generous. He could not refuse. Otherwise would he not be inferior even to Qin Lai, a mere martial man? He could only force out a faint smile. It is Su Sir's honor to have won the favor of Miss Shen. This Marquis also agrees. I will certainly have Sir Su teach them with care. Granted, let it be as Shen Yuan has requested. General Qin, Marquis Enying, let this matter be arranged by you. We obey your decree. The crowd answered in unison, holding my younger sister Shen Yu's hand. I bowed once more before the emperor to thank him for his grace, then saluted General Qin and Marquis Enying in gratitude for. When we walked out of the Hall of Golden Throne, the sunlight was still blinding. Qin Lai strode past us. As he passed, he paused slightly and said in a low voice, Miss Shen, Wei Yiting will visit your residence in 2 days. The Nding Marquis and his wife still looked rather grim. They gave us a reluctant nod before hurrying away. My younger sister leaned against me and asked softly, Sister, do we really not have to go to anyone else's house anymore? What are we going to do in the future? I'm not going. I said softly, from now on, elder sister will take care of you, and together we'll keep our home safe. The next day, at the Shen residence, Miss, someone from the General Wei Bei's residence has come. So soon? I was slightly taken aback. General Qin certainly acts with great speed and decisiveness. Please have tea served in the front hall. I'll be over shortly. I steadied myself, then added, wake the second miss and have her get ready too. She can come over later. Yes. There were 2 people standing in the hall. With his back to the doorway, tall and straight as a pine, was a man wearing an indigo martial outfit with arrow sleeves, suited for ease of movement, a leather belt cinched at his waist, quick boots on his feet, and his hair tied high, held in place only by a blackwood hairpin. This must be Wei Yiting. In my previous life, I had only heard his name and never seen him in person. I only knew that he was a rising talent under General Qin's command. Later, after earning outstanding military merits, he became a formidable general in the Northern Territory, with an excellent reputation, and was a rare man of integrity. On the other side, lounging carelessly in a grandmaster's chair, with one leg even bent up and resting on the edge of the chair, idly toying with a small jade-carved horse in his hand, was a boy who looked to be just over 10 years old. He was none other than Qin Zong, the only son of General Wei Bei, Qin Lai. The moment I saw him, memories from my previous life surged back. That Qin young master who always paraded through the streets with a gang of prodigals, dressed in fine clothes and riding fine steeds at a banquet. He deliberately knocked over my fruit tray, then loudly sneered, Miss Shen, you're now the Hu Mansion's golden canary. You can't touch such coarse things. He blocked my carriage many times, speaking flippantly and mocking me, a daughter of a military family. Yet you insist on copying the manner of civil officials, simpering and weak, ready to blow over in the wind. You've truly disgraced General Shen. When I was driven to the brink by Shen Nuanuan and the entire Hu Mansion stood by coldly, it was Qin Zong who suddenly scaled the wall into my courtyard, seized my wrist, and said, Shen Yuan, you can stand being in this rotten place. Come back to the general's residence with me. Let me see who dares lay a hand on you. In my previous life, I was proud and arrogant, and I also trapped myself in the identity of the Marquis house's young lady, and in Jiyu Yanqing's hypocritical tenderness. I took his help only as humiliation, flatly rejected it, and said many hurtful things. At the time, he was furious, his face ashen with rage. He slammed the door and left, leaving behind the words, Shen Yuan, one day you'll die because of your ridiculous self-righteousness. After that, he truly never appeared again. Even after I died, I never knew what became of him later. Miss, Uncle Fu spoke up. The 2 people in the hall turned back at the sound. Wei Yiting turned around. This humble general, Wei Yiting, has come at General Qin's orders to pay a visit to Miss Shen. Qin Zong slowly put down the jade horse in his hand and, swinging his leg, sized me up from head to toe. Oh, so this is the Miss Shen who was shouting in the Golden Throne Hall about setting up her own household and inheriting the title. He drew out the last syllable. At first glance, doesn't seem that formidable to me. Skinny arms and legs. She's not even as tall as the red-tasseled spear in my courtyard. As he spoke, he let out a snort of laughter. First, young Master Qin, what I said in the hall yesterday came from the bottom of my heart. Every word sincere, not a joke. As for whether I'm formidable or not, I paused, my gaze sweeping over his foot resting on the chair. At the very least, this humble woman knows that when one is a guest, one should observe the host's proprieties and respect the host's possessions. General Qin is bold and upright. Surely he also teaches young Master Qin to uphold etiquette and order. The mockery on Qin Zong's face froze. He clearly had not expected me to confront him so directly, much less bring up his father. He stared at me for a couple of moments, slowly putting his foot down, though he still sat askew. With a snort, he said, sharp-tongued, I heard you originally chose that pretentious, affected Marquis's residence. Why the change of heart? Now you want to squeeze your way into our military family's door. Wei Ting's brows knit slightly as he lowered his voice and snapped, Qin Zong. I did not get angry, only looked at him quietly. In my previous life, I had heard far worse than this: malicious words, deliberate humiliation, and all sorts of deliberate trouble. Now that I looked again, this boy of just over 10, beneath that spoiled and dissolute exterior, seemed to be hiding something else. Lord Qin has misunderstood, I said calmly. By the Emperor's grace, this humble woman and my sisters are permitted to remain in the Shun family for the time being and establish our own household. Inviting Commander Wei to instruct us in martial arts was something the Emperor personally approved at court yesterday. And General Qin agreed to it as well. It is not that this humble woman is fickle. As for the Marquis's residence, Mr. Su Yang is learned and accomplished, and of noble character. To have his guidance in reading and understanding principles is a blessing for this commoner woman and my sister. Literary talent and military prowess can complement each other. How can there be any talk of superiority or inferiority, or of scheming for advantage? Qin Zong was left speechless by my retort. He could only huff in annoyance again and turn his face away. A faint smile flashed across Wei Ting's eyes. He cupped his fists toward me and said, the general has ordered this subordinate to come first to see how eldest miss and second miss are doing and to learn something of their foundations, so that I may draft a plan for future instruction. I wonder about second miss. As he was speaking, Xunyu walked in, holding her maid's hand. Seeing strangers in the hall, especially Qin Zong, who looked like he was not to be trifled with, she immediately hid behind me. Are you? Don't be afraid, I said to Wei Ting. This is my younger sister, Xunyu. My sister and I are indeed, as young Master Qin said, very inexperienced in martial arts and know almost nothing about it. In the future, we'll have to trouble Captain Wei to take care of us. Wei Ting nodded and looked at Xunyu with a gentle expression. Second miss, there's no need to be nervous. Training in martial arts is for strengthening the body. Progress can be gradual. May I ask whether the eldest miss and second miss usually run, jump, and play? How is your stamina? Qin Zong, meanwhile, couldn't sit still either. He stood up, walked around Xunyu and me in a half circle, and clicked his tongue twice. Well, one of you looks like she'd be blown over by a gust of wind, and the other has a braver heart than a rabbit. Big brother Wei, this job of yours won't be easy. In my opinion, they'd be better off learning embroidery from Master Su. At least then they won't be able to endure hardship and end up crying their eyes out. Master Qin, whether we can bear hardship or not is our own business. Whether we cry our eyes out or not doesn't concern you. As for you, you keep calling yourself a child of a military family, so I suppose you're well versed in archery and horsemanship, with exceptional martial skills. Qin Zong was stunned, then lifted his chin. Of course, I've practiced martial arts since I was 3, drawn the bow since I was 5. By now, 3 or 5 ordinary men can't even get close to me. Is that so? I raised a brow slightly. Then I suppose you came back from training this morning. I wonder what exquisite footwork you practiced that left your robe stained with morning dew and mud, and what kind of sharp moves could have torn your sleeve on the thorns. Qin Zong's expression stiffened. He drew his sleeves in slightly, and his gaze flickered. He had been forcibly dragged up by his father today and had come along with Wei Ting reluctantly. Along the way, he had even been scolded a few times by Wei Ting. What do you know? How can one practice martial arts without getting dirty or torn? Young master is right. So, we sisters haven't even begun yet. So how can young master be so sure that we definitely can't endure hardship and will definitely cry? Could it be that General Qin teaches young master to judge others by himself? Qin Zong was red in the face from my words. He had always strutted about arrogantly in the circle of dandies in the capital. When had he ever seen such a sharp-tongued little girl, who was also so reasoned that every word left him tight-chested and speechless? Especially since this girl looked several years younger than him, and her height didn't even reach his shoulders. I then ignored the enraged Qin Zong, who was hopping mad, and turned to Wei Ting. Captain Wei, please forgive my manners. May I ask what you plan to test us on today? Captain, my sister and I will follow your arrangements. Wei Ting composed his expression and said seriously, martial arts cannot be mastered in a day, they require persistence. May I ask whether your residence has a somewhat spacious courtyard? Yes, the practice grounds in the back garden are fairly level, I replied, then looked at Qin Zong. If young Master Qin is interested, you may also come along to offer some guidance. Qin Zong was still seething with anger. At this, he turned his head away and said, who wants to guide you lot? I, young master, am not free. Though he said that, his feet did not move. I did not press the matter and, taking Shenyu by the hand, said to Wei Ting, Captain Wei, please come with me. The group came to the training ground in the back garden. Wei Ting had Shenyu and me do a few simple movements, such as stretching, kicking, squatting, and standing on one leg with our eyes closed. He also asked about our daily diet and routine. He watched carefully and asked carefully, showing no perfunctoriness just because we were girls at first. Shenyu was nervous, her movements stiff, but under Wei Ting's patient guidance, she gradually relaxed a little. Though she didn't do it well, she could still barely manage to complete it when it was my turn. I tried my best to imitate the clumsiness and weakness of a 7-year-old child, while also showing just a hint of seriousness and coordination beyond my age. It couldn't be too poor, or they'd lose all interest in teaching me, nor could it be too good, or it would arouse suspicion. Wei Ting watched my movements, a thoughtful look in his eyes, but he said nothing. Qin Zong had been standing off to the side the whole time, arms crossed and leaning against a corridor pillar, watching. Every now and then, he let out a few cryptic scoffs, or nitpicked with comments like unstable stance and weak arms. I pretended not to hear him. After a brief examination, Wei Ting had already formed his own assessment. Both young ladies do have rather weak foundations, but they are still young, which makes this the ideal time to lay a solid base. The second young lady is somewhat frailer, so she should first be conditioned with gentle methods, along with basic footwork and flexibility training. As for the eldest young lady, he glanced at me. Your bones and sinews seem a bit more supple than they look, and you're steadier-minded too. You can start with basic stance work, fist forms, and simple weapon grips. Proceed step by step. Do not rush for quick results. Later I'll write up a simple list and leave behind some basic exercises. The two young ladies can try them first. I'll come again in 3 days and adjust things according to the situation. Thank you, Captain Wei. H. Flashy but useless. Qin Zong poured cold water on it again from the side. Qin Zong, starting tomorrow, come here every day at the hour of Chen to supervise Miss Shen and the second young lady as they complete their morning basic training. I'll come once every 3 days to check their progress and adjust the methods. Qin Zong suddenly widened his eyes. Me, supervise them? Big brother Wei, are you kidding me? I'm busy every day. How would I have time to come watch these two little girls stand in horse stance every day? Wei Ting didn't even move a single eyebrow. Busy fighting cocks and racing horses, or busy driving away the private tutor. The general said that you've been restless and irritable lately, and that neither your studies nor your martial arts have made any progress. It's only right that you find some proper work to temper your temper. I have already reported this matter to the general, and he also thinks it's very good. My father agreed too. How could he? Why not? General Shen and the general share a bond forged through life and death trials. Now that the Shen sisters are in need, it is only right for the general's manor to lend a hand, as the general's son. Sharing your father's burdens, overseeing and instructing them, is also part of your duty. Besides, spending all day in the company of those good-for-nothings, What can you possibly amount to? Look at Miss Shin. At only 7 years old, she already knows how to stand on her own and strive for strength. And you?" Qin Zong was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, instantly bristling. "Wei Ting, don't compare me to her. She had no way out. As for me, what about you, if you think supervising the two young ladies in martial arts is beneath the status of you, young Master Qin, then I'll report back to the general right now and say that you look down on this assignment and would rather go back to being busy with whatever it is you're doing. Only, by then, if the general comes to ask you himself, he may have you go to the training grounds for an extra 3 hours of spear practice." The rest of Qin Zong's words were all choked back. He glared at Wei Ting, then shot me a fierce side. "You win, Wei Ting. You're ruthless." He flicked his sleeve sharply and stormed out of the Shen residence gate. Only then did Wei Ting turn to Shen Yu and me, and with a slight cupped fist salute, said, "Miss, second miss, Qin Zong may have a rebellious temperament, but his foundation in martial arts is still decent, so he should be more than capable of handling basic training. If he behaves improperly, neither of you need to put up with it, just say so directly, or tell me when I come." Cultivating martial arts depends on perseverance. In the beginning it will certainly be hard. I hope the two young ladies will do their best. Every day thereafter at the hour of Chen, Qin Zong would show up punctually at the Shun residence's training grounds, his face full of displeasure. The complaints continued as usual, with sarcasm here and there, but the breakfast he brought from the general's residence never once failed to arrive. Color gradually returned to Shen Yu's face, and she no longer became breathless so easily when running or jumping. Those basic stances and footwork, when I practiced them in private, I could already execute much more smoothly. Wei Ting came once every 3 days to check the progress and adjust the methods. He didn't say much, but his eye was sharp. As for the supervision of Qin Zong, he never commented on it, only occasionally adding 1 or 2 pointers in a calm tone when Qin Zong's explanations were too crude. In front of him, Qin Zong would always rein in some of his arrogance. 6. Compared with the steady, unwavering fulfillment of the agreement on the general's residence side, there was still no movement from the Marquis of Anding's residence, since the day the post was delivered, stating that Mr. Su Yang would come to the manor to pay a visit and discuss matters. It had been like a stone sinking into the sea. I asked Fubo to send word twice, and both times the reply was, "The Marquis and Madam are thinking of you. It's just that the household has been busy of late, and Mr. Su also has some trivial matters keeping him occupied. He will come in a few days." Yet the man himself never appeared during a break in practice that day. Shen Yu leaned against me to rest and asked softly, "Sister, does that Mr. Su from the Marquis's residence dislike us, so he hasn't come?" "Dislike us? Not necessarily. I'm afraid it's just that the Marquis's residence, seeing that my setting up an independent household has become a foregone conclusion, and having gained the Emperor's attention as well as the openly stated support of the General's manor, feels that continuing to invest resources in teaching us would be not worth it, so they deliberately drag things out and remain cold, hoping to make us back down in the face of difficulty, or else find some other way on our own." I couldn't help feeling a little irritable. As for Su Yang, I already knew from my previous life that his learning and character were exceptional. He was truly the kind of teacher who could impart real knowledge. At present, I urgently needed to broaden my horizons and study practical, world affairs knowledge. Relying only on the shallow memories from my previous life and the limited understanding of a sheltered young lady was far from enough. Maybe the gentleman really is busy. Busy with what? Qin Zong, who was standing nearby with his arms folded, suddenly cut in. He had sharp ears. "Can the lousy affairs of the Anding Marquis estate be more important than teaching you two students?" It's clearly just an excuse. After these past few days together, it became apparent that although this young Master Qin was relentless with his words, his thoughts were pure and straightforward. Perhaps young Master Qin has a point, however. His Majesty personally approved it, and the Marquis personally agreed to it. How can it be handled so perfunctorily? If Mr. Su truly does not wish to come, he can say so plainly, and we can find someone else of high caliber. What does it mean to keep dragging this out like this? Qin Zong looked at my furrowed little face and snorted, straightening up. What's so hard about that? If they won't come, why don't you go invite them? My heart stirred. We go to the Marquis's manor ourselves to invite the teacher. Is that appropriate? Would the Marquis's wife think we're being rude and ignorant of etiquette? Etiquette? Qin Zong sneered, that unruly air of a military family son rising in his brows and eyes. They broke their promise first. What etiquette is there to talk about? You're going to demand an explanation, not beg for charity. What's there to be afraid of? The more he spoke, the more justified it seemed to him, and he even grew a little eager to try. What a coincidence, this young master has nothing important to do today. I'll go with you. I'd like to see just how high the threshold of the Duke of Anding's manor is, that they dare even ignore something they promised His Majesty. Going to ask in person was a bit humble, but with Qin Zong, who feared nothing and had a sufficiently formidable background, added into the mix, the situation became different. If it worked, it would be seen as persistence and deep respect for one's teacher. If it didn't, it would still rip open the Duke's facade and bring the matter out into the open. All right. I made up my mind and curtsied to Qin Zong. Then I'll have to trouble young Master Qin to accompany us on this trip. Qin Zong seemed not to expect me to agree so readily. He froze for a moment, then lifted his chin. Fine, let's go now. The three of us didn't delay any further. When Uncle Fu heard that we were going to the Marquis's residence, he was startled and repeatedly tried to stop us. I soothed him down, only reminding him to bring more servants. Qin Zong waved his hand grandly. Why bring anyone? With this young master here, how could I let you get lost? He thus, a Shun family carriage, carrying the three of us half-grown children, arrived before the gates of the Marquis of Anding's residence 7. When the gatekeeper saw the Shun family carriage and then spotted Qin Zong's clearly troublesome-looking face, he froze for a moment, then hurried inside to report. Not long after, we were led to a small flower hall in the Marquis's residence used for entertaining guests. Shun Jiru was not there, only Lady Lin came out to meet us, and when she saw us, a flash of surprise and awkwardness quickly crossed her eyes. A Yuan, a you, why have you come? And this is, young Master Qin. Lady Lin stepped forward, intending to take my hand. I subtly turned aside to avoid her, then bowed properly. Greetings, madam. We have come uninvited today to request an audience with Sir Su Yang. The last time, Madam sent someone to pass along word that he would be coming to the residence in a few days to offer instruction, but I have waited several days and still have not seen him arrive, and I am feeling uneasy, fearing that I may have done something wrong and offended him. Which is why I have come specially to inquire. My words were polite and considerate. Lin's smile stiffened. Look at you, child, what are you talking about? How could the Marquis's residence forget? It's just that Mr. Su has had some private matters to deal with lately, and the Marquis is also busy with the year-end. What private matter could be more important than something His Majesty personally instructed and the Marquis himself agreed to? Qin Zong impatiently interrupted her. He plopped down on a chair nearby, crossed one leg over the other, and spoke without the slightest courtesy. General Shun sacrificed his life for the country and left behind only this little bloodline. If he wants to learn something proper, he still has to read the face of some hanger-on in your Marquis's residence and wait until he finishes his private matters. Madam who, if this gets out, I'm afraid it won't sound very good, will it? Lady Lin's expression changed slightly, but she managed to keep a smile on her face. Young Master Qin, that's quite a bit too strong. It's really just that. Just what exactly? Qin Zong raised an eyebrow. How about we go into the palace right now and ask His Majesty how important this private matter of Mr. Su's really is, or I could go talk to my father, to General Qin, and see whether the old man thinks this is appropriate. His words carried both a threat and deliberate nonsense, yet because he was young and backed by a powerful family, no one could lash out at him. Mrs. Lin was so angry that her chest heaved, but she still didn't dare truly offend the Wei Bei general standing behind Qin Zong. She took a deep breath and forced a smile. Young Master Qin, you must be joking. Since that's the case, I'll have someone go invite Mr. Su at once. As for whether the gentleman is in the manor right now and whether he can come immediately, I also can't. Just then, two children rushed in from outside the door. One was a girl, about 8 or 9 years old. Her small face was a little flushed from the cold wind, and her features were 5 or 6 parts similar to Mrs. Lin's. She was none other than the Hu Residence's true heiress, Shun Nuanuan. The boy standing beside her looked a little older, around 10 years old. He wore a royal blue brocade robe with cloud patterns and a dark cloak over it. He had a handsome face, rosy lips, and white teeth, and his pair of peach blossom eyes seemed born with a smile, now slightly curved. Jiyu Yanqing, the suffocating sensation of the white silk cord tightening around my neck in my previous life seemed to strike across time and space, leaving me breathless and my fingertips instantly cold. I looked calmly at Shun Nuanuan and Jiyu Yanqing. When Shun Nuanuan saw me looking at her, she lifted her chin slightly, and in those eyes so much like Madame Lin's, there was disdain and a strange sense of superiority. She said nothing, merely gave a soft snort through her nose. It was Jiyu Yanqing who stepped forward half a pace, wearing the gentle and refined smile befitting a young master of an aristocratic family, and cupped his hands. Miss Shun, second Miss Shun, I am Jiyu Yanqing. My father and the Marquis of Anting are old friends. Sister Nuanuan heard that the Shun family's young ladies had arrived and grew curious, so she wanted to come have a look. He spoke beautifully and with impeccable tact. I suppressed all the surging emotions in my eyes and gave a slight nod. So you are young Master Jiyu, Miss Shun. Shun Nuanuan took a step forward and curled her lip. So you're that Shun Yuan. I heard His Majesty let you stay in your own home, so you don't have to go to someone else's house anymore. Yes, I didn't want to talk much with her. Oh, then why are you still coming to my house, and insisting on asking Teacher Su to come teach you? Madame Lin said gently. Nuanuan, mind your manners. The Shun young ladies are eager to learn, and Teacher Su is learned and accomplished. Seeking instruction in knowledge is perfectly normal. His Majesty also pities them, which is why he granted it. I sneered inwardly. In my past life, the Marquis's manner used this kind of seemingly considerate and thorough, but in fact constantly demeaning, approach to gradually erode my confidence, making me increasingly dependent on the manner, and on Jiyu Yanqing. Miss Shun's words are mistaken. Having Mr. Su provide guidance was granted by His Majesty's golden words. It was something the Marquis personally agreed to in court. It was not that Shun Yuan came uninvited to demand it, nor was it any extra favor bestowed by the manor. Shun Yuan is merely following the imperial decree and honoring the agreement, coming to discuss the details with the manor. How can that be called insisting on it? Could it be that Miss Shun thinks His Majesty's decree and the Marquis's promise can both be treated as a joke? Shun Nuanuan was still young and had been spoiled, so she had never heard such a sharp, veiled rebuttal. Her little face instantly flushed red, frantic and angry. She said, You're making excuses. You just see that Mr. Su is good, and you want to take him away, just like, she seemed to want to say more, but got stuck. Tears were already welling up in her eyes. In the end, she could only glare at me fiercely. You just like stealing other people's things. I clenched my palm hard. I can't have an episode, at least not now. I closed my eyes and looked at Shun Nuanuan, saying nothing but the chill in my gaze somehow made the chattering Shun Nuanuan lower her voice unconsciously, even shrinking back a little. Jiyu Yanqing frowned slightly. He stepped forward and stood in front of Shun Nuanuan. Miss Shun, please don't be angry. Nuanuan is young and speaks her mind. She means no harm. She just cares especially about the people and matters around her parents. Miss Shun, you're magnanimous, so please don't hold it against a child. But Shun Yu suddenly raised her head. You're talking nonsense. Elder sister didn't steal anything. It was His Majesty the Emperor who agreed that we could stay in our own home, and it was also His Majesty who agreed that elder sister could hire a tutor to teach us to read and practice martial arts. The Marquis and Madam also agreed to it. If you say that, are you saying that what His Majesty said was wrong? Can the Marquis go back on what he promised too? This is defying an imperial decree. Shun Nuanuan was so frightened she forgot to cry. Staring blankly at Shun Yu, the smile on Jiyu Yanqing's face froze. His gaze turned sharp as he looked at Shun Yu, then quickly swept over me. Even I was slightly taken aback. not expecting my younger sister to say something so direct. "Oh dear, you mustn't talk nonsense." Madam Lin drew her into her arms and patted her lovingly. Only then did she look at us, her gaze lingering on Shen Yu's face for a moment before she sighed. "Yuan, this child Nuan has been spoiled by me. She doesn't know how to speak carefully. Yanqing, too, why didn't you stop her?" Then she looked at Shen Yu, who was still puffed up with indignation, and softened her tone even more. Is disobeying an imperial decree something you can just say casually? That's a grave offense that can cost you your head. Nuan and Yanqing are only young and ignorant. They misspoke. How can you drag the emperor's decree into this?" At this moment, Madam Lin was simply stepping in to smooth things over, fearing that if the matter escalated and actually got tied to disregarding the imperial will, it would be bad for the Marquis's residence. As for Shen Nuanuan's hostility toward me and Jiyu Yanqing's hidden malice beneath his gentle facade, she was probably more than happy to see it happen. "Madam is right." I lowered my head slightly. "My younger sister is still young. Her words about defying the imperial decree were indeed reckless. I ask Madam and the two of you to forgive her." I paused, then continued, "As for seeking instruction in scholarship, since His Majesty has granted permission and the Marquis has approved, Yuan feels only gratitude in her heart and harbors no other thoughts." 8 At that moment, a scholar in a somewhat worn blue-green robe slowly walked in. He first bowed to the Lin family matriarch, then let his gaze fall on me and Shen Yu. He also glanced at Qin Zong, who was sitting there with no regard for propriety. "Mr. Su was indeed delayed by some trivial matters some days ago and could not keep the appointment in time, making the two young ladies wait. This was my fault," Madam Lin hurriedly said. "Mr. Su, you're too kind. It was only that the household had not made proper arrangements." But Su Yang did not continue responding to Madam Lin. Instead, he looked at me. "Miss Shen has come in person today because you are eager to begin your studies." I stepped forward and bowed again. "Sir, you see clearly, my sister and I have lost both our father and mother, and our learning is shallow. We fear wasting time and disgracing our family name. We have long admired your eminent talent and virtue. Since your Majesty has granted permission and the Marquis has consented, this junior will look forward day after day, only hoping to receive a little guidance from Sir, to learn a few characters and understand a bit of reason, so that in the future I may not end up reduced to an ignorant woman, and may also comfort the spirits of my late parents in heaven. In that case, tomorrow at the 3rd quarter of the hour of Chen, I, Su, will come to your residence to pay a visit. I wonder whether the Shen household has a quiet study prepared. As for the class time and content, I will still need to discuss them with the two young ladies." Done, my mind eased, and I curtsied once more. "The study is all set and ready for you, sir. You may make all arrangements as you please." At the side, Madam Lin's expression had already turned rather unpleasant, yet she could only force a smile and echo in agreement. Qin Zong finally stood up in satisfaction. "Now that's more like it. Let's go," he called to us after leaving the Marquis's residence and getting into the carriage. Qin Zong wore a proud look on his face. "How was that? Once I make a move, I count for 2. When dealing with those civil officials who beat around the bush, you've got to be direct." Shen Yu whispered to me, "Sister, young Master Qin doesn't seem quite so annoying anymore." I couldn't help but curve my lips into a slight smile, although his manner was crude and straightforward. If he hadn't been here today, things might not have been resolved so smoothly. "Today, thank you, young Master Qin." Qin Zong froze for a moment, seemingly unaccustomed to me thanking him so seriously. He turned his face away, his ears red, and huffed. "What's there to thank? I just can't stand their ugly faces. I'm leaving. You still have to be supervised while practicing horse stance tomorrow." 9 In the makeshift study room in the Shen residence, the charcoal fire burned quietly, and Mr. Su Yang arrived as promised, teaching for an hour and a half every day without fail. What he taught was not confined to the female precepts or the poetry and verse that young ladies of the inner quarters usually studied. Instead, he began with the most basic literacy and handwriting, interspersing lessons on historical allusions, geography, and even simple principles of arithmetic. When he lectured, He cited classics and historical texts, yet explained them in a way that was clear and easy to understand. Both Shinyu and I listened with utmost attention. Not many days after that unhappy parting at the Marquis's residence, Shun Nuanuan appeared in the study at the Shun residence. She tilted up her little face. I want to study with Mr. Su too. It's not fun to learn by myself at home. Madame Lin naturally could not refuse her daughter, and she smiled gently at me. A Yuan, this child Nuanuan has heard that the elder sisters are studying here and is quite envious. She insisted on coming along. I was thinking that if the children are together, they can keep each other company and learn from one another. Wouldn't that be better? Mr. Su Yang's expression remained faint. What could I say? Refuse? On what grounds? Could I say, I don't like her? Shun Nuanuan is the legitimate young lady of the Marquis's residence, while Su Yang is still, in name, merely a guest of the Marquis's residence. His Majesty's decree only said to allow my sisters and me to invite Sir Su to instruct us. It did not stipulate that others may not listen in. Lin Sha had put it so reasonably that if I refused, I would only seem petty and mean, and I would make things difficult for Sir Su as well. Mr. Su is highly learned, and it's a good thing to have one more person listening to his instruction. It's just that the study is rather plain. I'm afraid it will wrong Miss Shun. It's no trouble at all. Shun Nuanuan immediately chimed in, her eyes flicking to the large characters I had just written, and she pouted, and so, Shun Nuanuan joined the afternoon lesson before long. Jiyu Yanqing also appeared quite naturally. His reason was even more persuasive. Nuan is visiting the Shun residence for the first time and is still so young. Aunt asked me to look after her a bit. Besides, Mr. Su's reputation as a scholar is well known far and wide, and I, Yanqing, have long admired him. I wonder if I may have the cheek to sit in and listen, and catch a little scholarly air. Su Yang still wore that indifferent expression, one that revealed nothing of his mood, and nodded. Young Master Jiyu, as you please. Thus, in the study, the original three, me, Shun Yu, and Mr. Su, became five. Shun Nuan had little patience for proper studying. She often drifted off or played with the writing implements she had brought, but whenever Mr. Su asked a question or commented on my and Shun Yu's schoolwork, she would immediately prick up her ears. If we answered well, her little face would tense up. If we made a mistake, a look of triumph would flash in her eyes. Jiyu Yanqing, on the other hand, listened with complete focus toward Mr. Su. He was always humble and courteous. Toward Shun Nuanuan, he was patient and gentle, and toward me and Shun Yu, he would occasionally offer a gentle word of advice when I ran into difficulties, always with just the right amount of tact, so impeccable that it chilled me to the core. In my previous life, he had also been so refined and considerate at first. All of this naturally escaped neither the eyes of Qin Zong, who came punctually every morning to check in. At first, he merely crouched outside the study window, frowning at the two extra people inside, especially when he saw Jiyu Yanqing lean toward my desk and speak in a low voice. He would snort heavily, or deliberately make some noise. Later, perhaps thinking that supervising us through the window wasn't enough, he simply swaggered into the study as well, under the grand pretense of Brother Wei told me to keep an eye on them every day, and that naturally includes making sure they aren't distracted by some irrelevant people. Sir Su Yang gave no comment on this. He only said lightly, herding one sheep is herding a flock is also herding. As long as you don't make a fuss, find yourselves a seat. Qin Zong immediately found a spot very close to me and sat down. However, asking him to sit quietly and read or write was even more unbearable for him than making him hold a horse stance for an hour in less than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. He would start fidgeting, either dropping his brush, knocking over the inkstone, or baring his teeth at the words on the page as if he had a grudge against those black characters. Seeing Qin Zong's crude behavior, Shun Nuanuan often covered her mouth and laughed softly, or exchanged a disdainful glance with Jiyu Yanqing. At first, they only muttered under their breath, but after seeing that Qin Zong seemed to have no other way of dealing with it besides glaring, they grew bolder. 10 That day, Teacher Su was explaining a fable from the Zhongguo Ce when Qin Zong, half asleep, absent-mindedly twirled a wolf hairbrush in his hand. A few drops of ink accidentally flicked from the tip and landed on the white Shen paper in front of him, splattering onto the sleeve of Shun Nuanuan beside him as well. Ah! Shun Nuanuan let out a soft cry, seeing those glaring dots of ink on her sleeve cuffs. Her little face instantly darkened. She wiped them hard with a handkerchief in disgust. Honestly, so clumsy and careless, staining my new clothes, as expected of someone from a family of military brutes, always resorting to such rough tricks, not even able to hold a pen steady. Qin Zong's drowsiness vanished in an instant. He was already irritated, and upon hearing this, his temper flared even more. He slammed the pen onto the desk and said fiercely, "What did you say? If I want to flick ink around for fun, what's it to you? If you think it's dirty, then don't come here. Go back to your Marquis's residence and wear your gold and jewels there. You're insulting people." Shun Nuanuan's eyes reddened as she looked at Jiyu Yanqing. Jiyu Yanqing immediately set down the book in his hands. "Brother Qin, that is not quite right. Dirtying someone else's clothes was Brother Qin's oversight to begin with. Sister Nuanuan is young and likes to stay clean. Complaining a little is only natural. Brother Qin, as a man and the descendant of a military family, you ought to be magnanimous. How can you speak so rudely and bicker with a little girl?" Qin Zong was so choked by his refined, perfectly reasonable words that he could hardly breathe, and could only say angrily, "Jiyu Yanqing, stop being so hypocritical here. The two of you are just singing in harmony. Do you think I can't tell? Isn't it just that you don't like me? If you've got the guts, step outside and have it out with me. What kind of skill is it to only trade barbs, young Master Qin, in the academy? We should make friends through scholarship. How can we resort to violence at will?" Jiyu Yanqing shook his head, looking every bit the regretful a child who cannot be taught. Just as Qin Zong was about to explode, Teacher Su Yang still kept his eyes lowered on his scroll, as if he had heard nothing at all. I put down the pen in my hand and lifted my head. My gaze swept over Jiyu Yanqing, whose eyes held a faint hint of satisfaction, and Shun Nuanuan, who looked on the verge of tears. That wave of annoyance surged up in my heart again. "Master Qin," I said. Qin Zong and Jiyu Yanqing both looked at me at the same time. "Your ink did indeed splash onto Miss Shen's sleeve." Qin Zong widened his eyes, apparently not expecting me to speak up for her, but I changed the subject, turning my gaze to Shun Nuanuan. "Miss Shen, young Master Qin did not do it on purpose. It's only a garment. Wash it clean." Arguing and bickering in the academy not only disturbs the teacher's peace, but also delays everyone's studies. I paused and looked at Jiyu Yanqing, my tone cooling a little. "Young Master Jiyu, it is a good thing to try to make peace, but it would be better to speak less of things like military men are rude and ought to be broad-minded. Young Master Qin is straightforward by nature and means no harm. As for sparring," I shook my head slightly. "If you wish to exchange martial skills, the training grounds are always open. If you want to discuss your studies, then please listen." Attentively and calmly, Qin Zong stared at me in a daze. The rise and fall of his chest gradually settled. Though his face was still flushed with anger, he let out a harumph and said nothing more. He only shot Jiyu Yanqing a vicious glare before sitting back down. A trace of surprise flashed in the depths of Jiyu Yanqing's eyes. He looked at me deeply, his smile tightening slightly, before quickly becoming impeccable again. "Miss Shen is right." Yanqing misspoke. He turned to Shun Nuanuan and coaxed her gently. "Nuanuan, it's only a little ink stain. Let the maid handle it when we get back. Don't let this delay you from listening to Mr. Su's lesson." Shun Nuanuan pouted. Though unwilling, she could only reluctantly let it go. 11 However, from that day on, the few of them seemed to be competing with one another instead. Shun Nuanuan would always mock Qin Zong for sitting like a slob and writing like a ghost scribble. He would immediately glare back at her, but he no longer got angry so easily or shouted at her. Instead, he would retort in a sarcastic tone, "This young master is just like this. If you like it, look. If you don't, get out. This is the Shun residence, not your Marquis Manners private school." Whenever this happened, Jiyu Yanqing would step in to smooth things over, saying things like, "Brother Qin is forthright, and Nuanuan, don't joke around." And whenever Jiyu Yanqing spoke up, that feeling of disgust in my heart would rise. "If you want to quarrel, Take it back to your marquis's residence and quarrel there. This is a place for studying. I had said this more than once. Every time I said it, I would look at Jiyu Yanqing's slightly stiffened smile and at Shen Nuanuan's puffed up yet afraid to speak too loudly expression, then lower my eyes and continue reading my book and practicing my writing. Mr. Su Yang always seemed like an outsider, offering guidance only on schoolwork and turning a blind eye to the undercurrents and skirmishes between the children. Only once, after assigning the homework and just before leaving, he passed by me, paused in his steps, and let out a very soft sigh. Excessive rigidity leads to breakage, girl Yuan. The hand holding my brush trembled slightly as the seasons shifted from cold to heat and back again. The phoenix trees in the courtyard had turned green, then yellow, then fallen, and in the blink of an eye, 8 years had passed. The once cramped practice ground had been carefully repaired and widened, and the weapon racks were no longer empty. Shen Yu had shed the roundness of childhood. Her figure had lengthened, like a stalk of green bamboo, supple yet upright. A set of spear techniques flowed from her hands with practiced ease. The spear flowers she spun carrying the sound of slicing wind, riding hard with whip in hand, was even more gallant and crisp, and between her brows there was now the bold spirit of a general's fierce daughter. And I, under Wei Yiting's guidance and through day after day persistence, was no longer that frail figure that seemed ready to be blown over by the wind. The arrow-sleeved fitted outfit on my body made my movements crisp and silent. Qin Zong, as usual, was relentless with his words, all show and no substance. If you really run into someone stronger, they'll take you down in one move. Yet the contempt that had once been in his eyes was already gone. We have all grown up. Shen Nuanuan has blossomed into a dazzling and lovely beauty, the famous pearl of the marquis's residence in the capital. Her engagement to Jiyu Yanqing was set when they were still children, a match made in heaven and a classic union of equals. Jiyu Yanqing, too, has grown into a graceful and refined young gentleman, with an exceptional bearing and a reputation for talent that spreads far and wide. He treats people with gentle courtesy, as warm and polished as jade, winning the hearts of countless young ladies. Toward Shen Nuanuan, he remains as considerate and protective as ever, his gaze so tender it seems to drip with affection, making him the fiancé everyone envies. That afternoon, Mr. Su was unexpectedly summoned to the marquis's residence, so the afternoon class was dismissed. Shen Yu was goaded by Qin Zong into going to the training grounds to spar with the new spear techniques he had just learned, and the two of them left bickering noisily. Since my wrist felt a little uncomfortable when I was practicing this morning, I wanted to return to my room to get some medicated oil, so I walked alone toward the back courtyard. Passing through the moon gate connecting the front and back courtyards, I came upon a small bamboo grove. Just as I reached the edge of the bamboo grove, I heard a woman's voice from inside, choked with tears. "I just like you. I just think you're different from those pretentious young masters." It was Shen Nuanuan's voice. I stopped in my tracks and hid behind a dense clump of xiangfei bamboo. Through the gaps in the bamboo leaves, I could see Shen Nuanuan with her back to me, wearing a brand new lotus pink butterfly and flower dress, her figure trembling slightly. Facing her was none other than Qin Zong, his brows knotted into a tight furrow. Qin Zong was dressed today in a stone blue dark patterned arrow-sleeved everyday robe. He was already taller than many men his age, with broad shoulders and long legs, though that impatient, sour expression on his face had not changed a bit over the years. At the moment, he had his arms crossed, his body leaning back slightly, his eyes filled with disbelief and irritation. "Shen Nuanuan, what nonsense are you talking?" Qin Zong's voice was full of anger. "Has your brain been ruined by that hypocrite Jiyu Yanqing's sweet talk?" "No." Shen Nuanuan suddenly looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Brother Yanqing is kind to me, but it's not the same. I'm about to come of age. As long as you nod, as long as you like me even a little, I'll go plead with father and mother and have the engagement to brother Yanqing broken off." "Qin Zong, I'm sincere." These words from Shen Nuanuan were rather unexpected, but it was very much in keeping with her nature. Having grown up pampered and indulged in the marquis's estate, she believed that whatever she wanted, she could surely get, and she took even love for granted. How much of her liking for Qin Zong came from the wild, unruly vitality he possessed, so different from the refined, elegant young gentleman around her, and how much of it carried a secret sense of rivalry with me. Qin Zong let out a scornful laugh, utterly unceremonious. Break off the engagement, like me, Shen Nuanuan, save it. I've got no interest in pampered young ladies like you who burst into tears at the slightest thing and are so delicate they seem ready to shatter at a touch. Shen Nuanuan's face instantly turned deathly pale. Large tears rolled down her cheeks as her voice rose sharply, edged with a piercing tone. Qin Zong, how can you say that about me? What's wrong with me, how am I not as good as? You're not as good as him anywhere, Qin Zong interrupted impatiently. Am I so bored that I'd compare myself to you? Hurry up and go back to your Yanqing Gij. Stop annoying me here. Also, I'll pretend I never heard what you just said today, if you dare go around spouting nonsense. Or keep bothering Shen. He paused and hastily changed his words. Bothering anyone else. Don't blame me for being rude. After saying that, he turned and was about to leave. Is it because of Shen Nuanuan suddenly asked sharply from behind him, her voice full of unwillingness. Do you like her? That? Shut up. Qin Zong turned abruptly, his gaze sharp and terrifying, so intimidating that Shen Nuanuan took a step back in fear and swallowed the rest of her words. Shen Nuanuan, I'm warning you. If I hear even one more disrespectful word about the Shen sisters come out of your mouth, no matter whose daughter you are, I, Qin Zong, will beat you up without hesitation. Get lost. His final get lost was full of hostility. Shen Nuanuan was finally frightened. She covered her mouth, sobbing as she turned and ran away. Qin Zong stood where he was, his chest still rising and falling slightly with anger. He irritably raked a hand through his hair, muttered something under his breath, and then strode briskly toward the training grounds. I leaned against the bamboo thicket until the footsteps of both of them had completely vanished. I had not been entirely unaware of Shen Nuanuan's feelings for Qin Zong after this incident. Shen Nuanuan's hostility toward me was likely to deepen even more, and Jiyu Yanqing, if he learned that his fiancée, whom he had carefully cherished and regarded as a treasure, had actually gone to confess her feelings to someone else. Even intending to break off the engagement, what would he think? 12. I shook my head, took the medicinal oil, and walked out of my courtyard. Just after stepping out of the gate, I saw Jiyu Yanqing standing beneath a magnolia tree that had bloomed late. His hands clasped behind his back. 8 years had refined him into an even more elegant and handsome man, with beautifully defined side profile lines. At the sound of footsteps, he turned around, and a gentle, jade-like smile immediately spread across his face. Has Sister Yuan returned? His voice was gentle, his gaze falling on me. Just now I heard Sister Yu say that your wrist is hurting. Is it serious? I have some excellent blood-activating ointment that was prescribed by an imperial physician in the palace. It works very well. I'll have someone send it over tomorrow. Thank you for your kindness, young Master Jiyu. It was only a minor injury, and it's already fine. I gave a slight nod, my tone distant and polite, and kept walking, intending to leave directly. Miss Yuan is always so polite. Jiyu Yanqing took 2 steps forward and naturally walked beside me. Speaking of which, I've recently been reading the asterisk discourses on salt and iron asterisk, and I have some questions. I had originally wanted to ask Mr. Su, but he was unexpectedly summoned to the Marquis's residence. I wonder whether Miss Yuan has read this book carefully. What are your thoughts on the strategy of equalized distribution and price stabilization mentioned within it? I sneered inwardly. Asterisk discourses on salt and iron asterisk. Although the Shen family is now under my management, most of its holdings are related to estates and the shops bestowed by His Majesty, far removed from state monopolies such as salt and iron. Was he suddenly bringing this up to truly discuss scholarship, or was he trying to inquire into the Shen family's business? Young Master Jiyu is widely learned, whereas I have only learned a few characters. How could I dare speak rashly about statecraft in front of you? I only flip through things casually in my free time. I can hardly claim to have any real insights. Miss Yuan is too modest. Jiyu Yanqing chuckled softly. Who doesn't know that over these years, Miss Shen has managed the family business with great order? to the point that even His Majesty once praised you for having much of your father's spirit. Such talent and insight are hardly comparable to those of an ordinary sheltered lady. Every time I think of it, I can't help but admire you." His praise sounded utterly sincere, his gaze so gentle it could drown a person. If I was still the Shun Yuan of my past life, craving recognition and constrained by the rules of the Marquis's household, perhaps my heart would already be racing and my face flushed red, but now, I only felt that behind that gentleness was a hook meant to slowly drag me, and the Shun family, into his web. "Master Gu flatters me too much. I'm merely guarding the family business and doing my duty." I stopped in my tracks. "I'm a bit tired." "Young Master Gu, please feel free to carry on." The smile on Gu Yanqing's face did not change, but the light in his eyes dimmed for a moment before quickly returning to normal. He said considerately, "It was my oversight. Sister Yuan's wrist is still unwell. You should be resting properly, then I won't disturb you." After a pause, he mentioned it again as though it were an afterthought. "Oh, right. A few days ago I happened to acquire an ancient painting from the previous dynasty. It seems to have once been in General Shun's collection. Another day, I'll bring it for Sister Yuan to appreciate together. It can be considered returning it to its rightful owner." Having said that, he gave me a deep look before turning and leaving. I watched him disappear beyond the moon gate, my brows slowly furrowing. An old keep, returning it to its rightful owner. What a convenient excuse. Over the years, he had approached me both openly and covertly under various pretexts, always keeping the proper distance, never overstepping, and never revealing the slightest hint of anything to Shun Nuanuan. Shun Nuanuan only assumed that his treatment of me and Yu was due to his usual gentlemanly demeanor. Only I knew the depths of his insatiable greed. He wanted to take everything from the family, to bit by bit erode and absorb the remnants of the Shun family's power and wealth, even the favor and patronage that might remain because His Majesty still cherished old ties, and fold it all into the Gu family's grasp. And as for Shun Nuanuan, he probably wasn't entirely without feelings for her either. 13 As autumn deepened, urgent reports from the frontier flew into the capital. The northern DI had invaded the border, breaking through 3 cities in a row. The defending general had died in battle, and the frontier was in desperate peril. The court and the common people were shaken. Voices calling for war and for peace rose in a clamor, but with the iron hooves of the northern DI racing southward in full force, negotiations would be no different from seeking a skin from a tiger. The emperor overruled all objections and issued an edict to reorganize the army and prepare for war. He appointed General Qin Lai of Wei Bei as commander-in-chief, drew troops from the capital garrison and the nearby prefectures, and rushed them north to reinforce the frontier. When the news reached the Shun residence, I was checking the accounts for the estate's harvests over the past few months. The northern frontier. It was there that father and my elder brother fell in battle and were wrapped in horsehide as their shroud. "Sister." The study door was pushed open. Shun Yu had changed into a narrow-sleeved riding outfit, her hair tied up high, her cheeks were flushed, but her eyes were astonishingly bright. "His Majesty has issued an edict. General Wei Bei will command the army." Her voice trembled with excitement. "Sister, I want to go. I want to join the expedition." My heart sank at once. "Nonsense." I put down my brush, my voice stern. "What kind of place is the battlefield? Swords and spears have no eyes. Life and death can turn in an instant. You're a young lady. What if I'm only a daughter?" Shun Yu interrupted me, her back straight and her gaze stubborn. "Father was a man, big brother was a man, and they died in battle. There are no cowardly men left in the Shun family. Are we to let the bloodline of loyal heroes die out? Sis, all these years I've diligently practiced martial arts and studied military texts, not so I could stay in the capital admiring flowers and reciting poems with others. General Qin said my spear skills are already no worse than those of an ordinary commandant, and Brother Wei also said I have real talent for tactics and improvisation on the battlefield. I have the ability, and I have the responsibility, to go." Responsibility. I stood up and walked over to her. "You, the Shun family's responsibility doesn't mean you, as a woman, must go to the battlefield and risk your life to bear it. We can do it in other ways." "What other way?" Keep guarding this little family business, treading carefully in the muddy waters of the capital, Shun. Yu shook her head, pain flashing in her eyes. Sister, do you know what I heard recently? The grain and military funds the Ministry of War allocated to the northern frontier are being siphoned off at every level. If half of it can still reach the border intact out of 10 parts, that would already be a blessing. Winter clothing is being passed off with inferior materials, and the swords and spears are rusted beyond use. The soldiers are shedding blood on the front lines, while those vermin in the rear are drinking their blood. Father and eldest brother, were they back then, too? Because of, her voice caught, and her eyes reddened. I was struck as if by a heavy blow, standing frozen in place. I had not been completely unaware of these matters. There had been occasional correspondence with the Shun family's former retainers, and their words inevitably carried resentment. I just never expected things to have reached such a shocking extent. The northern DI are fierce. If there are further problems with supplies in the rear, so I have to go. Shun Yu grasped my hand. Elder sister, you're in the rear, you can see things more clearly than I can, and think more thoroughly as well. Stay home and come up with ways to do more practical things for the front lines. I'll go to the front and see for myself, protect them myself, and never let father's and eldest brother's former men die in vain again because of those filthy schemes. This younger sister, who had depended on me since childhood, had already, without my noticing, grown into a towering tree that could stand on her own and even shoulder the family's mission. After a long while, I slowly let go. All right, I only said one word. Shun Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. Sister, if you're going to go, then be prepared. I cut off her sentimentality. I'll go help you pack your things. The essential medicines, protective soft armor, a handy weapon. Also, I'll find a way to contact father's former subordinates in the northern frontier. If you go, you'll have someone to look after you. Shun Yu nodded vigorously. Soon, Qin Zong rushed in, also dressed in fitted, practical clothes. Shun Yu, are you also going to the northern frontier? He got straight to the point, his gaze burning. Yes, Shun Yu lifted her chin and replied. Qin Zong pounded the doorframe with his fist. I knew it. My father has ordered me to join the campaign and go ahead with the vanguard. Brother Wei is going too. When the time comes, he looked at Shun Yu, his tone complicated. Stay close on the battlefield, and don't charge ahead. Your little bit of half-baked skill might be enough to deal with bullies and thugs, but if you really run into the elite troops of the northern DI, you don't need to worry about that. Shun Yu shot back indignantly. Just take care of yourself, young Lord Qin. Don't get weak in the knees once you're on the battlefield. Seeing the two of them about to start arguing again, I quickly stepped forward and stood between them. Mr. Qin, I said solemnly, giving him a respectful bow. Yu is still young and quick-tempered. This journey to the northern frontier is fraught with danger. So please, for the sake of our many years of acquaintance, if possible, I ask that you look after him a little. Qin Zong froze. He looked at me, his eyes flickering for a moment, before finally muttering awkwardly, "Got it, you didn't need to say that." He turned his face away, but the tips of his ears had gone a little red. Then he barked at Shun Yu. "Did you hear that? Your sister has already given the word. Don't go running around then." Shun Yu snorted, but didn't argue back. Qin Zong stood there for a while longer, as if he still had something he wanted to say. His gaze swept over my face for a moment, but in the end he only tightened the blade at his waist, turned, and strode off, tossing back a line. 3 days from now, outside Zizhimen, muster at the Marrow Hour. 3 days later, before dawn, I stood at the outer edge of the crowd seeing them off, watching Shun Yu in full battle dress standing at the head of the army with Qin Zong, Wei Yiting, and the others. The emperor personally poured wine to bid them farewell. It was not until the army set off, hoofbeats like thunder and dust rising, that those one by one departing figures were swallowed up at the end of the official road leading north. But I did not have much time to dwell on sorrow and parting. Grain and fodder, weapons and equipment, winter clothing, those vermin. I returned to the Shun residence and shut myself away for 3 days. I brought out every ledger, every inventory of the Shun family's assets, the records of all the imperial gifts bestowed by His Majesty over the years, and the correspondence exchanged with my father's former subordinates. After 8 years of careful management, the Shun family's assets, though not enough to rival an empire's wealth, had still accumulated a considerable fortune, relying solely on the Shun family's money. To fill the court's deficit would be nothing more than a drop in the bucket, but what if, using this as the foundation, I worked it cleverly? I spread out paper and brush and began writing letters to grain merchants I knew well in Jiangnan, to reliable fur merchants in the north, to uncles and elders among my father's former subordinates who now served as quartermasters or local officials in various places, ordering large quantities of grain, medicinal herbs, leather, and pig iron. At the same time, through Fu Bo, I secretly contacted several long-established workshops with excellent reputations and placed orders for padded clothing, boots, spearheads, and arrows. The purchased supplies were broken down into smaller lots and transported through multiple trade routes to several strongholds near the northern frontier, where they were then taken over by Shun family veterans whom I had already contacted, and delivered directly to the soldiers. The connections that needed to be smoothed out in all this were extraordinarily complex. I had nearly exhausted all my energy and mobilized every connection I had accumulated over 8 years. Although Mr. Su Yang no longer taught every day, during my most difficult times he personally wrote several letters to his former students and old associates serving in the northern regions, greatly facilitating the supply of provisions for me. Money was spent like water. The Shun family's treasury silver was quickly running low, but I felt no heartache at all whenever I thought of the wind and snow in the northern frontier, thought of my younger sister, Qin Zong, Wei Ting, and countless soldiers like my father and elder brother who might die needlessly from a lack of clothing and food, or from weapons that were not up to the task. I felt that these worldly possessions were nothing to me. What did it matter if they were all spent away? My actions could not possibly remain completely hidden from the attentive people in the capital. Certain changes in the Shun family's assets gradually began to attract attention. 15. Jiyu Yanqing's visits became increasingly frequent. Miss Yuan seems to have been quite busy lately. I hear that the Shun Trading Company has grown into a vast enterprise, even stirring up the rice markets of Jiangnan. Miss Yuan is truly a heroine among women. Such boldness is astounding. Holding my teacup, I said calmly, "Young Master Jiyu is joking. It's nothing more than ordinary business, just to supplement the household expenses. The Shun family is small, but the costs are not insignificant either." "Oh," Jiyu Yanqing raised an eyebrow, "but as Yanqing understands it, the quantities of grain and hides Miss Yuan has purchased cannot be explained by merely supplementing household expenses, can they? With the war in the northern frontier raging on, these are all scarce supplies. Could it be that Miss Yuan has the borderlands on her mind and wishes to serve the country? Privately purchasing military supplies on a large scale could, to put it more seriously, be construed as interfering in state affairs or harboring treasonous intentions." I set down my teacup and looked up at him. "Young Master Jiyu is overthinking it. The Shun family has been loyal and upright for generations. Now that the northern border is unsettled and Yu has gone off to campaign with the army, as his elder sister, I am anxious in my heart, doing some small good deeds within my means, praying for the soldiers and sharing the emperor's burden. What is wrong with that? As for how much is bought or sold, commerce is free, and the law does not prohibit it. On the contrary, young Master Gu's such keen interest in the Shun family's petty little business truly leaves a Yuan flattered and startled." I invoked the banner of descendants of the loyal and upright and sharing the emperor's burden, leaving him momentarily speechless. Jiyu Yanqing gave me a long, deep look, and in the end he did not ask further, only his smile faded a little. "Sister Yuan has put a lot of thought into this. It's just that this matter is of great importance, so we should still be cautious." I nodded. "Thank you for the reminder, young Master Jiyu." After he left, I finally let out a slow breath. Not long after, someone from the palace actually came, and a palace attendant brought a few oral decrees from the emperor. The emperor said, "I am already aware of Miss Shun's loyalty and sense of justice. Your actions are quite well ordered, and I am deeply gratified." The emperor also said, "The soldiers in The northern frontier suffer the bitter cold, and I often keep them in mind here in the palace as well. What Miss Shun is doing is beneficial to both the nation and its people. Feel free to go ahead and do it. If you encounter any difficulties, you may use this object to send a message into the palace. The attendant left behind a jade token. I held that jade token, still warm from body heat, and stood in a daze for a long time. The emperor, he knew he did not blame me for overstepping, but instead tacitly allowed it. The emperor's meaning was very clear. The matter could be done, but it had to be done cleanly, with no mistakes, and above all, those corrupt officials in court could never be allowed to seize an excuse and turn around to bite back. With this tacit approval, I began gathering evidence of certain court officials embezzling military pay and trafficking in arms. Through Mr. Su Yang and some reliable channels, reports from the northern frontier arrived from time to time. With victories and defeats, Shun Yu's name occasionally appeared near the end of the military merit rolls, all minor achievements, but at least they proved she was safe. Qin Zong and Wei Ting repeatedly won military merit, and their reputations began to grow. Every time I hear that they are safe, I can finally let my anxious heart relax a little. 16 After the new year, a batch of grain and military supplies was to be escorted to the northern garrison. Who would have thought that just 3 days after the convoy left the capital, word came back that the Marquis's cherished daughter, Shun Nuanuan, had actually disguised herself as a man and secretly slipped into the escort team, heading all the way north. Rumor had it that Miss Shun left behind a farewell letter, plainly stating her dissatisfaction with the Gu family engagement and that her heart belonged to someone else. This trip north was to pursue the one she loved, and who exactly was that beloved person had almost become an open secret in the tea houses and taverns of the capital. As soon as this news broke, the entire city was in an uproar. The Marquis's residence and the Gu family were instantly pushed to the center of the storm, becoming the laughingstock of the entire capital. Shinjiru sent people to give chase, but it was already too late. Lady Hu Lin almost fainted upon hearing the news, both angry and anxious, yet powerless to act. Jiyu Yanting's father, Jiyu Mingtang, the Vice Minister of Revenue, was utterly humiliated and flew into a rage. As for Jiyu Yanqing himself, he remained composed and merely sighed. Sister Nuanuan is young and willful, but the smile never reached his eyes, and the hand in his sleeve was likely already clenched into a fist. Shun Nuanuan had actually found her way to the vicinity of the northern border camp, and no one knew what means she had used to have a letter of annulment passed through several hands before being delivered to Jiyu Yanqing. This move was tantamount to completely tearing the two families' faces apart. Jiyu Mingtang personally visited the Dingan Marquis residence. It was said that he had a long private talk with Shinjiru in the study, and they parted on bad terms after coming out. Minister Gooseface was ashen as he swept his sleeve and left, never setting foot in the Marquis residence again. The friendship between the two families was, from that point on, friendship in name only. The families and circles of the capital are all the best at reading the wind and steering with it. In an instant, the banquet invitations related to the Gu family and the Marquis's residence dwindled. Everyone was waiting to see how this farce would end. On a chilly afternoon in early spring, the matchmaker sent by the Gu family actually came to the Shun residence. The one who came was Madame Zhong, a rather respectable matchmaker in the capital. With her silver tongue, she praised Jiyu Yanqing as if there were no equal to him in heaven or on earth, and said how much the Gu family valued the Shun family's reputation, how young Master Jiyu admired Miss Shun's talent and virtue, and that he was willing to marry her as his rightful wife, forming a bond of Qin and Jin and continuing the friendship between the two families. After hearing Madame Zhong's spittle-flying pitch, I didn't even lift my eyelids. Thank you for your hard work, Madame Zhong. Master Jiyu is a talented young gentleman of distinguished family background, and a Yuan is unworthy of such a lofty match. Moreover, my younger sister is still in the northern military camp. As the eldest daughter of the Shun family, I must remain at home to manage the family business, and I have no thoughts of marriage for now. Please convey our gratitude to the Gu family's kindness. Shun Yuan appreciates it. Zhong, the matchmaker, still wanted to persuade her. Miss Shun, this is an incredible match. A man of Master Gu's looks and talent could hardly be found anywhere in the capital. You must think it over carefully. If you miss this chance, Fu Bo, see the guest out, Zhong. The matchmaker hit a snag and left in embarrassment. The news spread, and everyone was shocked. No one had expected that Shen Yuan, an orphan who had lost both her parents, would have the nerve to so bluntly refuse a family of the Jiyu family's standing. Beyond their surprise, they also vaguely felt that this Miss Shen was probably far more calculated than she appeared, and even harder to control. With the Jiyu family's proposal rejected, their dignity was further damaged. Jiyu Mingtang had worn a gloomy expression in the court for several days. However, to everyone's surprise, in just over a month, Jiyu Yanqing became engaged to the legitimate daughter of an assistant censor-in-chief from the censorate. Although that assistant censor-in-chief came from a family of upright scholars and was not wealthy, he held considerable influence within the censorial system. When I heard the news, I was alone in the study organizing the recent accounts and the records of supplies sent to the northern frontier. Jiyu Yanqing is engaged. It's not Shen Nuanuan, and it's not me, love. Perhaps he had some genuine feelings for Shen Nuanuan, but before the interests of the family, they were nothing worth mentioning. As for me, I may have once been a valuable chess piece in his plan. Now that the piece has slipped out of his control, he has decisively discarded it and turned to a new target. 17. I set down my pen and ran my fingertips over a plain silver bracelet on my wrist. It was a keepsake my mother had left behind, with the tiny words peace and safety engraved on the inside. In my previous life, I wore it on my wedding night, red candles burning brightly. My heart was full of unease and anticipation, only for me to feel the white silk cord tighten around my neck in the next instant. Inch by inch, Jiyu Yanqing bent down and whispered in my ear. He said, Nuanuan has suffered for 16 years in the countryside. You should repay her somehow. I'll leave all the Shen family's belongings to her as compensation. Compensation, what a ridiculous joke. Did they seize the Shen family's wealth merely to compensate Shen Nuanuan, or was Shen Nuanuan herself just a smokescreen to hide their true intentions? Doubts began to grow wildly. Although the Jiyu family were upright civil officials, Jiyu Mingtang had risen to the position of Vice Minister of Revenue, overseeing finances, grain, and taxes. The Ministry of Revenue in the corruption case involving grain and military provisions in the northern frontier. Although His Majesty has already ordered a covert investigation, the matter is far-reaching and progress has been slow. Where did the grain, supplies, and weapons that were extorted at every level ultimately go? That day, a letter was delivered to the gatehouse of the Shen residence. The letter was written by Shen Nuanuan. Shen Yuan, I know you hate me, and I hate you too. But right now I have no one else to talk to. I followed the convoy delivering grain and supplies here, but I didn't see Qin Zong. They wouldn't let me into the military camp, but I saw those grain sacks. Some of the bags had ripped open, and the rice spilling out was yellow and broken, mixed with sand, and those carts carrying winter clothing, I secretly felt them. The cotton stuffing inside was stiff and thin, and it wouldn't block the wind at all. This is completely different from what I saw in the capital. I asked my father, and he told me not to stick my nose into grown-up affairs and to hurry home, but I was scared. These things are meant for the soldiers to use. Qin Zong and the others are using them too. Shen Yuan, aren't you pretty capable? Didn't you once deliver things to the borderlands? Could you take a look and see what on earth is going on? I don't dare tell anyone else. The letter was very short, and the handwriting was sloppy. Shen Nuanuan might be spoiled and foolish, but right now she was at the edge of the northern frontier, and what she saw with her own eyes was truly horrifying. Even if she was still immature and thoughtless, she knew those inferior provisions and winter clothes could kill people. I held the thin sheet of paper, my fingertips icy cold. The batch of urgently procured provisions and baggage escorting Shinjiru really had a problem. How much was the Anding Marquis manor involved? What about the Jiyu family? Jiyu Mingtang is the Deputy Minister of Revenue. Could he really escape responsibility for the allocation, procurement, and inspection of these military supplies? The Jiyu family's coveting of the Shen family's assets was probably not just for wealth, but more likely to cover the huge shortfall created by their embezzlement of military supplies. Marrying me, or otherwise taking control of the Shen family's assets, would not only bring them money, but perhaps also let them use some of the Shen family's old connections and channels in the northern border, making it easier for them to carry out their schemes. In her previous life, they succeeded. I married into the Jiyu family, and the Shen family's assets were properly merged into the Jiyu family. Then, after my accidental death, everything was compensated to Shen Nuanuan as a matter of course. What a clever move. Borrowing a dead body to bring oneself back to life and substituting one thing for another. 18 A chill swept through my entire body. I forced myself to stay calm, based solely on Shen Nuanuan's letter and my speculation. It was far from enough. I needed evidence. I put away Shen Nuanuan's letter. I made use of some of the connections Mr. Su Yang had left behind, contacting grain merchants and fur traders I had worked with before, and indirectly inquiring about recent government procurement. I had Fu Bo keep an eye on the movements of officials involved in purchases for the Ministry of Revenue and the Ministry of War. I even, through the Jade Token, sent a confidential report into the palace about potential quality hazards in military supplies in the northern frontier. After being betrothed, Jiyu Yanqing did not completely give up on me. He would still occasionally send over invitations, or ask me to appraise ancient books and paintings. That day, I was reviewing the spring-plowing advance accounts sent in from several estates, when my eyes fell on one entry for clearing waterways and reinforcing embankments. The note from the village head said that during last autumn's flood season, there had been a dangerous situation near the river channel due to years of poor maintenance, but fortunately it was discovered and repaired in time. This spring, the authorities finally allocated a small amount of funds, but it was far from enough, so the village had to raise most of the money itself. River channel, embankments, Ministry of Works. My heart gave a sudden jolt. Jiyu Mingtang was the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, in charge of finances and grain supplies, but military provisioning, procurement, and engineering construction were often closely tied to the Ministry of Works, and the Ministry of War and the Minister of Works seemed to have quite a few dealings with the Jiyu family. A thought emerged. I stood up and walked to the window. The Jiyu family was like a venomous snake lying in the shadows, hissing as it waited at any moment to strike a fatal blow. Can't wait any longer. The evidence that passed through my hands and was quietly sorted out by Mr. Su Yang, account books, secret letters, witness testimony, physical evidence, were all interlocking pieces in an airtight chain. Embezzling military pay, reselling military weapons, passing off inferior goods as superior, and even suspected dealings with northern DI merchants. Each and every one of them was shocking to the eye. The emperor was furious. The once bustling and immensely illustrious Jiyu residence was surrounded by imperial guards overnight. The moment the imperial edict was read aloud, Jiyu Yanqing turned ashen and lifeless. Like dust, the fate of the Jiyu family's male members being executed, their female relatives reduced to servitude, and the family property confiscated and seized by the state vanished like smoke. The emperor ordered that the proceeds from the confiscation of the Jiyu family, aside from a portion to be turned over to the national treasury, were all to be used to purchase military supplies and sent immediately to the northern frontier. And the person chosen to escort this crucial shipment was personally appointed by the emperor, me, Shen Yuan. Since you have both this resolve and this ability, I shall give you this opportunity. Inside the imperial study, this journey is long and dangerous, and the perils ahead are unknown, but the soldiers at the northern frontier cannot wait, and cannot afford to be delayed. I trust you, your humble subject will not fail to live up to your majesty's trust. I prostrated myself, bowing my head to the ground, a burden of 1,000 jin pressing upon my shoulders. The farther north we traveled, the more vast and desolate heaven and earth became. Wrapped in a thick fur coat, my fingers numb with cold, I dared not slack off in the slightest, counting supplies day and night, arranging guards, and urging the journey onward. When we finally, after great hardship, reached the northern border city, what we saw nearly froze my blood. The city walls were broken and dilapidated, marked everywhere by fire, smoke, blades, and arrows. A few figures stood sparsely atop the wall, wrapped in ragged cotton coats whose colors were impossible to make out. shivering in the bitter wind, their eyes numb and hollow. There was no welcome, not even anyone coming down to inspect us. Only behind the crenellations of the wall, a few pairs of wary, exhausted eyes silently watched our caravan laden with supplies. Open the gate. By imperial decree, we are here to escort military supplies. The Imperial Guard captain in charge shouted loudly. After a long while, the heavy city gate slowly opened a crack. 19. I rode my horse forward, my heart suddenly tightening. The scene inside the city was even more shocking than outside. Broken chevaux de frise and war chariots lay toppled on both sides of the street, the snow stained black and red. Wounded soldiers were everywhere, huddled beneath the ruins, some groaning softly, others already silent. Those still standing were all gaunt and haggard, with sunken eyes and cracked lips that bled. They looked at our convoy with dazed eyes at first, then a green light of hunger and longing for food flared in them. Grain, is it food? A weak voice came from nearby. I looked toward the sound and saw a young soldier with a broken leg leaning against the wall, clutching a wooden shaft with no spearhead tightly in his arms, staring at me with eager eyes. It's grain, medicinal supplies, and winter clothes. I dismounted, my voice trembling. His Majesty has sent us to deliver them. Those words were like a spark thrown into a pan of oil. A wave of disbelief, sobbing, and quiet weeping erupted from the crowd. Miss Shen, a hoarse voice came from the direction of the city wall stairs. I looked up sharply and saw Qin Zong and Shen Yu supporting each other as they staggered down from the city wall. Their armor was crisscrossed with sword gashes and pierced by arrow holes, caked in blood. A blood-soaked linen bandage was wrapped around Qin Zong's temple. Shen Yu's left arm was slung in front of his chest with a cloth strip, her face as pale as paper and her lips chapped, but those eyes of hers burst with light the moment they saw me. Sis, Shen Yu's voice was hoarse, almost breaking. You all, looking at their battered, injured state. My heart ached as if cut by a knife, and I choked up, unable to speak. Qin Zong let go of the hand supporting Shen Yu and staggered up to me. His bloodshot eyes stared fixedly at me, then glanced at the long convoy behind me. His Adam's apple bobbed a few times. Why are you here? It's too dangerous here. Deliver something. How long has it been since everyone had a proper meal? An old soldier wiped his face, his voice choked with emotion. Nearly a month. Every day it's just one bowl of thin gruel so watery you can see your reflection in it. The arrows ran out long ago, and the blades are so worn they've curled from chopping. Yesterday, those northern DI brats charged again, and the brothers. We fought them while chewing on snow, with bricks and wooden sticks in our hands. At last, I could no longer hold back my tears, and they poured out in a torrent. What are you waiting for? I turned around and shouted hoarsely at the escort convoy behind me. Unload the carts immediately, set up the pots, start the fire, cook the rice, take out all the dried meat, grain, and medicinal herbs, all of it, quickly. The crowd began to move. The soldiers, whether wounded or uninjured, struggled to get up and help unload the wagon, lifting down sack after sack of heavy grain, bundle after bundle of thick cotton-padded clothes, and box after box of newly made arrows and spears and swords gleaming with a cold sheen. In the empty ground at the center of the city, dozens of large iron cauldrons were quickly set up. The snow was melted, rice and grain were added to the pots, and jerky was torn up and thrown in. The aroma of food rose softly over this dying frontier city. The moment the fragrance spread, I heard the sound of people around me swallowing their saliva. Many of the soldiers stared fixedly at the boiling pot, their eyes red, bodies trembling slightly. Qin Zong walked over to my side and looked at everything before him. After a long silence, he said softly, "You almost arrived too late. Yesterday, during that attack, you took a cut on his left arm while saving me. It nearly got severed. The medicine in the city had long since run out." I clenched my fists tightly, my nails digging deep into my palms. "It won't be too late," I said, looking up. "It won't be too late ever again." When the first pot of porridge was cooked and handed out to the soldiers, many of them held the rough clay bowls in their hands. Staring at the thick porridge with grains of rice and bits of meat inside, they were so overwhelmed they dared not even take a bite, and could only sob softly. More people were given cotton coats, replacing the old clothes on their bodies that had long since frozen stiff, and their cold bodies gradually began to feel a trace of warmth again in those pairs of eyes that had once been numb and despairing. Light began to burn once more at that very moment, the soldier keeping watch atop the city wall sounded the alarm, enemy attack, the northern DI people are coming again. The nerves that had just loosened slightly instantly tensed again. Qin Zong and Shun Yu almost simultaneously grabbed the new blades that had just been distributed beside them. Those who can still move, up to the city walls. Qin Zong roared, charging first toward the battlements, heedless even as blood seeped through the cloth strip at his temple. Shun Yu glanced at me, clenched her teeth, and picked up a newly issued spear with her uninjured right hand. Following after them, I stood where I was, watching the soldiers without hesitation throw down the bowls of porridge they had just warmed their hands on, grab their weapons, and charge toward the city wall. I did not follow, my battlefield was not here. Keep cooking, don't stop. I barked at the servants and wounded soldiers left to handle logistics, move all the arrows, logs, and boulders to the base of the city wall. Now, I ran back and forth between the city wall and the rear, organizing manpower and transporting supplies. In my ears were the thunderous cries of battle, the shriek of arrows slicing through the air, the deafening clash of weapons, and the steady stream of casualties being carried down from the battlements. The fighting continued from midday until dusk. The northern DI seemed to be fighting with everything they had this time as well, with each wave of assault fiercer than the last. The city walls were on the brink of collapse. Several times by the time the sky darkened, the enemy's offensive finally eased on the city walls. There were already very few soldiers left who could still stand. Everyone was wounded, their battle robes stained with blood. Qin Zong leaned on his saber, panting like an ox, while Shun Yu leaned against the city wall, the tip of the spear in his right hand still dripping with blood. I brought people to deliver the reheated meat porridge and steamed cakes, along with the prepared wound medicine. To the city wall, no one spoke. The surviving soldiers silently took the food and devoured it hungrily amid the cold north wind and the lingering stench of blood. This meal was eaten in unusual silence. Shun Yu sat down beside me, taking small sips of porridge. He tiredly closed his eyes and said softly, "Sister, it's so good that you're here." 20 Over the next few months, Shuorfeng City had ample supplies and excellent weapons, combined with General Qin Lai's masterful strategic command, the courage and initiative of generals like Wei Ting, and the rapid growth of a new generation of leaders such as Shun Yu. The tide of battle began to turn little by little. I stayed in Shuorfeng City. I coordinated supplies, comforted the wounded, organized laborers to repair the city walls and fortifications, and even used the Shun family's business network to continuously funnel supplies from the rear. Together with Qin Zong, Shun Yu, Wei Ting, and countless soldiers, I stood guard over this city and over this national frontier, until spring arrived and flowers bloomed. The northern DI finally exhausted their strength and withdrew their troops. By the time they returned in triumph to the capital, it was already early summer. In the Golden Throne Hall, merits were judged and rewards bestowed. Qin Lai was ennobled as a duke of the realm, and Wei Ting was promoted to general, each receiving their own rewards. When it was my turn and Shun Yu's, the atmosphere in the hall subtly tightened. The emperor's gaze fell on me. Shun Yuan, the eldest daughter of the Shun family, descendant of loyal and valiant service, has kept the nation and its people at heart. In the time of national crisis, she discerned treacherous and evil men, presented evidence to the court, unafraid of hardship and danger. She personally escorted military supplies and used her private fortune to support the army, stabilizing the rear of the northern frontier. Her contributions are beyond measure. He paused. The title of General Shun has remained vacant for many years. After careful consideration, I find that although Shun Yuan is a woman, her ambition and conduct are no less than any son of man. By imperial edict, Shun Yuan is hereby granted succession to the title of General Shun, to become the Marquis of Loyalty and Valor, with a fief of 1,000 households, to honor her merit and comfort the spirits of the loyal dead. A woman inheriting a noble title was not entirely unheard of, but among the meritorious subjects of this dynasty, It was the first case of its kind, however, recalling all that had come from the northern frontier, and the inside story of the Jiyu family's collapse. No one dared voice any objection. I took the weighty imperial edict, my fingertips trembling slightly at last. I had walked this road to its end. Then the emperor turned to Shen Yu, the second daughter of the Shen family. Shen Yu, a valiant daughter of a military house, volunteered for the campaign, brave beyond compare. She has repeatedly distinguished herself in battle. She is hereby appointed Jiawu colonel, given command of a battalion, granted a residence, and permitted to establish her own household. Your servant thanks your majesty for your great grace. Shen Yu knelt on one knee, his back straight as a spear. After the court session ended, I walked out of the palace gates. 21. Shen Yu excitedly pulled me along, saying something, while Qin Zong and Wei Yiting also came over to offer their congratulations. Just then, a figure appeared outside the palace gate. It was Shen Nuanuan. She had slimmed down a little and tanned a bit. The arrogance in her brows had faded somewhat, replaced by a touch of composure. She stood there alone, looking at us with a complicated expression. She had not been dragged into the Jiyu family case. After the Jiyu family fell from power, her engagement to Jiyu Yanqing was naturally annulled. The Marquis residence seemed to want to find her another suitable husband. But she refused them all. Our eyes met. She gave me a slight nod, did not come closer, and said nothing, turning to get into the Marquis residence carriage and leave. Having experienced life and death and witnessed the vastness of heaven and earth, perhaps she finally understood that some cages need not be broken by others. Stepping out of them oneself is already the boundless sea and sky. On the day the plaque of the Zhongyong Marquis residence was hung above the main gate of the Shen residence, the place was packed with guests. Qin Zong also came, alone, carrying a jar of wine. As night deepened, the guests gradually dispersed. He found me in the backyard. Shen Yuan, he called my name. His Adam's apple moved, and he seemed a little nervous. The war is over, and you've inherited your title. I came to ask you something. He paused, took a deep breath, and said, would you be willing to marry me? I looked at him quietly, without much surprise in my heart. These years of fighting side by side, of sharing life and death, those awkward gestures of concern, the silent protection, every little thing, had long since gathered into a river. But I shook my head gently. The light in Qin Zong's eyes dimmed instantly, and his lips tightened. It's not that I'm unwilling, I said. Qin Zong, I am now the Marquis of Loyalty and Valor. The Shen family's honor rests on my shoulders. Since His Majesty has allowed me to inherit the title, I have a duty to ensure the Shen family's name, forged in loyalty and valor, does not come to an end. If I marry into the Qin family, I would become a Qin wife. Then what of the Marquisate of Loyalty and Valor? Qin Zong froze. He had clearly never thought about this question. Seeing the dazed look on his face, my heart softened slightly, and I continued. Although Shen Yu has been granted the rank of colonel and may establish her own household, her ambitions lie on the battlefield. In the future, she will most likely remain stationed at the border for long periods, making it difficult for her to take care of the Marquis residence in the capital. The Shen family needs someone to hold the fort. Qin Zong remained silent for a long time. Suddenly, he lifted his head, his gaze resolute once again. Then don't marry, he said. I'll marry into your family. I was stunned. The more he thought about it, the more feasible it seemed, and his speech quickened. Right, I'll marry into your Shen family. Anyway, my father doesn't just have me as a son. Let him worry about the title of Duke of Qin. I'll marry into the loyal and brave Marquis's residence. That way, you're still the loyal and brave Marquis, and the Shen family is still the Shen family. What do you think? The legitimate eldest son of the Duke of Qin, marrying into another family? Never heard of it. I looked at his pair of eyes, bright enough to burn. It felt as if my heart had been touched. I lowered my eyelids and thought for a moment. No need to marry into my family, I said slowly. Qin Zong, you and I both inherit our family businesses, with no freedom of our own. Why not? Let us marry. But you will still be a son of the Qin family, and I will still be a daughter of the Shen family. Qin Zong frowned, puzzled. After marriage, we will each have our own residence and our own responsibilities. You may live in the loyal and brave Marquis mansion, or return to the Qin State Duke mansion. I will handle the affairs of the Shen family, you will take charge of the affairs of the Qin family. I looked at him and said word by word, if, one day, we have children. I paused, my cheeks slightly warm, then let one of them, surnamed Shen, inherit the title of Marquis Zhongyong, and the other, surnamed Qin, inherit the Qin Guogong manor. Would that be all right, under the moonlight? Qin Zong's eyes slowly widened, from shock, to dawning realization, and then to ecstatic joy. He suddenly stepped forward and seized my shoulders with both hands. Shen Yuan, how did you think of that? This is great. He looked at me, his eyes burning. Good, it's settled. We'll get married, have 2 children, one with the surname Shen, one with the surname Qin. No one can say we're disregarding our ancestors' family legacy. No one can separate us. I couldn't help but let the corners of my mouth lift slightly. I nodded lightly. He pulled me into his arms, tightly. The night breeze was gentle, and the moonlight was bright in the distance. The faint shouts of Shen Yu and Wei Ting sparring could be heard. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.